Hello, you're welcome along to another episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. It's Daniel here, joined alongside me by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
And yeah, Sean, what a crazy weekend. I suppose if we start with the gang and get straight to it, what an absolute shock. I did a lot of people's pick for the All Ireland final and beyond is Kerry. And it was a pretty shocking result, really. I don't know if a lot of people saw that coming, to be honest with you. So, what were your thoughts on the game, first of all? A crazy game that probably could only happen behind closed doors in that sense. And yeah, what was your take away from that, and what could become the story of the championship? Just more shocks.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's probably a game that doesn't happen behind closed doors. You've seen it in other sports, where surprise can happen. Teams can have off days, but I don't think that the Kerry crowd would have accepted a performance like that from Kerry and Parky Queeve. They were just so poor. They were so conservative. It was almost as if they didn't want to show their hand. I felt to other teams, and they just kind of wanted to get through it and do the bare minimum. And they were really off it, missing easy frees, easy chances. I mean, the tone was kind of set early on with Johnny O'Shea. His first shot from play was into the keeper's hands. He missed a bad wide, and it sort of came just rolling from there. And Cork won the midfield battle, and it's not often that Kerry against a county maybe other than Dublin don't win it. And even Dublin at times don't go into midfield with Kerry because of the strength they have of Moore and Barry if he plays, or the wing forwards O'Brien, and people like Gavin White picking up breaking ball. And I suppose that's what Cork got right. I thought Maguire and O'Hanlon in midfield were excellent, coupled with the likes of Taylor at wing back who got on a lot of ball, and Cork just sort of dominated from there. And I was really impressed, even in the first 10 minutes, if you like, with Cork, because they didn't step backwards. They just kept going. They never sort of panicked when they were on the ball. They were happy to hold possession. And I know a lot of people when smaller counties, if you like, are Division 3 teams come up against the Division 1 side. Um, Even though we know Cork really aren't a Division 3 side and they got promoted, but a lot of teams sort of panic when they're on the ball, and I kind of like the way Cork were happy to hold possession and sort of make Kerry work for it, and have Kerry, if you like, on the back foot, and even getting into that mindset that they're in a game. So I was impressed with Cork from early on in the game. I thought naturally Kerry's leaders would step up. And in the second half, we didn't really see that. Bar Killian Spillane, who came off the bench and was excellent. Clifford for
Yeah,
parts of that.
I was just gonna move on to David Clifford. Yeah, what did you make of his performance? Because there was a couple of really fantastic scores. I'm thinking of the one in extra time in particular that seemed to flow for an age. Maggie Clerkin that we're going to have on it tomorrow for our Masters preview was actually at the game with him. If you saw a couple of his tweets, and he was saying that Clifford score was one of the best he'd ever seen. He was it was amazing. What did you make of his overall performances? I guess towards the end there was a couple of easy missed chances as well.
Yeah, and he didn't get on enough ball in the second half, if you like. And even when Kerry were sort of just cradling possession and holding on to possession, where you normally want the scorers just popping off, they didn't really get that right. And you think that Dublin are so good at that. When Michael Fitzsimons or someone like a Niall Scully's running down the wing, and they're sort of holding on to possession with 5 or 6 minutes to go. They wait for the burst of a Kilkenny or a O'Callaghan or a Mannion, to put it over the bar. And Kerry really just couldn't really get their scorers on the ball enough, if you like, in really key positions. And the ball was kind of going into Clifford in the corner, and he was kind of asked to beat a few men. And Cork, it was probably one of the best I've seen, you know, a team mark Clifford, because they just seemed to read him very well. They didn't give him that little yard of space on his left, and where he was picking up the ball, it's very hard to score from your right. So it's you're naturally coming onto your left anyway, and they kind of seem to get that battle right. And it probably just shows you that without the likes of Gainey and O'Donoghue, Brosnan was on his debut, did okay, but they were lacking a real threat inside other than Clifford.
Yeah, and you forget with David Clifford, he's only 21, so there's huge pressure on them in Kerry. What do you make of Kerry overall going forward? It's a bit of a, knockout football. I guess it's not the norm in the championship, so it is a bit hard to dissect, particularly after the game. I'm interested to hear a lot of people's opinions over the next week. I think there'll be a lot written about Kerry, to be honest with you, over the next few weeks in various papers. What do you make of Peter Keane going forward? Is he the right manager to go? I know previously we would have spoken a lot about Eamon Fitzmaurice. You never were a fan overall of Eamon Fitzmaurice. Do you think Peter Keane is, compared to him, how is he done, and is he the right man to lead them forward next year? Because I could make the argument either way. I thought yesterday was a shocking performance, but I did think he was building something, particularly in those 2 All-Ireland finals last year.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people have said it on in articles and on Twitter and all. I think he just got the team right. Wrong rather. He left Stephen O'Brien out, which is a glaring omission considering Stephen O'Brien was, at times last year Kerry's best player. He dragged them through some games, against Mayo in Fitzgerald Stadium, which he was by far the best player with David Clifford. So I was shocked to see him not start. Like, naturally, when you see that, you think, is there an injury? Like, I'm never a big fan of, changing a couple of players before the match starts. Sometimes it's more of a statement thing to do, to maybe throw the Cork management off. So I was shocked to see that, really, and sort of playing Brian O'Beugly, who did actually play pretty well. I'm not his biggest fan, Brian O'Beugly, but I thought he did okay. But still, Stephen O'Brien's going to get you a couple of points, and that can be the difference. And even just the mindset of playing what is Brian is a traditional sort of wing back, if you like, more of a defensive style player at wing forward, to maybe negate the threat of Matty Taylor from Cork, who's a very effective ball carrier for them. But even still, I don't think it worked. And if you think about leaving someone like Killian Spillane as well off the bench, I mean, he's probably one of Kerry's most potent forwards now. He, every time he comes on, he seems to do a job, and I think 4 points in play in the time he had, and they were, bar one, I think they were all exceptional scores. And I think Peter Keane, look, a lot was said before he took the job that, he'd no senior county or even, I think, club experience really in the last while before he took the job. And maybe that just showed, and maybe he did sort of buckle under the pressure, and there was a lot of talk written about Kerry and challenging for Dublin, and maybe in some quarters being favourites. And I just think he got it wrong, and Kerry for the last 4 or 5 years have got it wrong, and it's a common theme. And I think there'll be a long winter now of watching Dublin, Mayo, Donegal, whoever go for an All Ireland and everything that comes with it. And I think there'll be a lot of pressure under Peter from within Kerry on Peter Keane, and whether he gets another bite of the crack, who knows. But I suppose there's probably the likes of Jack O'Connor waiting in the sidelines. Obviously he's people like him are gonna have a keen interest on what's going on, because it's a really exciting Kerry team, and they can't afford a couple of years of ill progress like they had. And I suppose it was the manner and the defeat for Kerry. They, where you'd expect the Dublin team or even the likes of Donegal or Mayo to sort of their key players to drag them through the game. You think of the likes of Kilkenny or Michael Murphy, or to his credit, Cillian O'Connor. Kerry just didn't have it, and every time you thought they did, Clifford missed that free. O'Shea missed frees in the first half. He kind of had a spell in the second half where he picked up, but even still, he was playing a lot deeper in that second half, and they just didn't seem to get it right. And in fairness to Peter Keane, when your most experienced player on the team, David Moran, is taking 2 pot shots in the second half of extra time that both land into the keeper's hands, your most experienced player, an all-star winner, at his best last year, and he goes and does that, then I don't think you have any chance.
Yeah, I always kind of look, when you're looking at a manager, like, is he underachieving with those players? Just quickly on David Moore, do you remember the All-Ireland final? He had a couple of those I think, ridiculous pot shots at critical moments. So the question for Peter Keane is he underachieving with the players, and can someone do a better job? Like, I thought with those players, he did the best he could bringing them to those All-Ireland finals. There'll always be regrets that they probably should have got the job done the first day with everything that happened with Johnny Cooper. But kind of Jack O'Connor come in and do something better? Is there a potential in Kerry for an outside manager, which you'd never expect a county like Kerry? Because I'm just thinking like those go back to those All Ireland finals. The likes of David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, they're all young, really young players. And in fairness to Peter Keane, he's brought them through. He's found the right positions for them. And should he be allowed to have that next year? Because this was a little bit of a different championship in that sense, and knockout championship.
Yeah, like I know. I think it would, if you like, be maybe a tad unfair. And there's no guarantee that a Jack O'Connor or whoever comes in and maybe changes the dynamic and gets Kerry close to winning an All Ireland. Yeah, like Kerry still threw it away. I think Cork probably on the game probably maybe deserved it. I thought I was very impressed with them, but in fairness to Peter Keane, like I said, when David Moran's taking 2 pot shots like that, I mean he has it in him. Like you said, the All Ireland final in the Kerry Mayo game, he scored in Fitzgerald Stadium. He scored a point from like 50 yards and put a couple of balls into David Clifford. And even when you see someone like him take a shot, I know when it goes over, in your head you're going, you don't want to see it because he's, it's probably a 2 out of 10. Whereas if it's a ball inside to Clifford, O'Brien, whoever, it's it's 6 out of 10.
And he's well capable of making those passes as well, isn't he, into Clifford? And they'd be so much more beneficial for Kerry. And again, that might come back to the management, and maybe David Moran has that free rein to take those pot shots because he's able to hit them over, I guess. But you can argue the other way, then sometimes the percentage play of putting that ball into your best player.
Yeah, and maybe it's a sort of, not a culture thing, but maybe it's a dressing room thing that David Moore feels that he's able to do that. I mean, he'd amazing stamina to still be running with 8 minutes to go or whatever, and be credited for it. But I mean, the first one I think was worse because I think he Clifford on his right, and it was a sort of a simple hand pass to retain possession. The second one's a little bit better, a little bit more okay because he's kind of running into trouble. But still, the notion of dropping it in to the keeper's hands is not a good thing. And maybe does he do that under a different manager or Jack O'Connor or someone he'll get a scolding for, and there'll be a lot of people in Kerry and who knows, but there's a lot of they had that Kerry Golden era 10 years ago, and is one of those players ready to take the reins in a couple of years, like we've seen with with other teams, and Henry Shefflin going in managing Ballyhale to All Ireland club victories. Is there a Kerry player at the past ready to bite his hand off and put himself forward?
Maybe aiming for Smarts again, no?
Yeah, maybe aiming for Smarts or Paul Galvin at Wexford. So look, there's a lot of food for thought for Kerry. I'm sure Keane will get another crack at it. I think it's probably fair, but at that stage, who knows? Dublin could be on for a 7-0. Donegal could have won an All Ireland. Mayo could have won their first All Ireland, and then all of a sudden the dynamics even more difficult for Kerry because Dublin are looking to bounce back, and Donegal and Mayo have got a sniff of it. So yeah, there's a lot of food for thought for down in Kerry, and unfortunately they have a long winter, I think, and it's sort of opened the championship up in a sense. And I think it's a brilliant result for Gaelic football because Cork didn't win that game, if you like, by
like a smash. It wasn't a smash and grab, but it
yeah.
kind of was, I guess, because there were points. You never thought that Kerry were going to lose it going into that. You thought maybe Cork would get the equaliser. Like when that ball was hanging in the air, I get, go on, sorry.
Yeah, but you can't, in that sense, take it away from Cork. Kerry should have won that game, and anyone who goes into extra time, anyone who after 90 minutes or whatever it is, only a point up, has themselves to blame. And I was impressed with Cork, and maybe it gives teams a template around the country. This is how to play Gaelic football. I mean, you play it hard but fair. You play it open, and you play decent attack on football. But then again, you're not naive. At the back, you make tackles high up the pitch. I mean, every sport has it where people make cynical fouls. You look at Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp. If their players think they're under threat from a counter attack, they take a yellow card or they make a foul or they're aggressive. And Cork were, and I thought fully deserved it. Yes, Kerry should have won it, but I think it's big for a county like Cork, and there's some serious players down there. Look, everyone knows about the Hurley brothers, and I think O'Hanlon in midfield was excellent. Maguire, who's their captain, was brilliant. I mean, he even in the first half when things weren't really going their way, and Kerry were sort of playing okay. Maguire won everything in midfield, and Matty Taylor and Powder were brilliant. And then Keane coming off the bench, I think it's a brilliant story considering he was over in Australia.
Mm.
And the ball just to have that concentration when the ball's coming down is
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it was
And
amazing. And it, like when I saw it first, I didn't realize he had just caught it and then scored the goal. Like it was brilliant. How far can they go in the? Would you have them down as a maybe not All Ireland contenders, but All Ireland, couldn't really rattle someone in Ireland semi-finals, or do you reckon it's the same kind of thing with Cork? It's a mentality thing of that inconsistency that they've always had down through the years, 2010 aside, really.
well, I think that their hardest game is their next game with Cork. I think it's always
Mm.
been like that for a considerable while. Um, I think it's in their I think it's lucky they're playing Tipperary and they know about Tipperary and they played them a lot of times. Maybe if it was Limerick or a Clare and there was that, I know Clare Division 2, but it was that little bit of unknown. Um, you wouldn't know a Cork, but I think because it's Tipperary, they played them a lot of times in Division 2 and 3. They'll know what to expect. Um,
They
you
always
know,
seem to
the,
get drawn against Tipperary as well, don't they, in the Munster Championship,
mm,
whatever way it works. It just
yeah,
seems, I don't have the stats, so maybe that's completely, I just have a picture of Cork playing Tip every year in the Munster Championship.
and Tipperary will fancy their chances as well.
Absolutely.
A very impressive win. Well, impressive if you like the um, exciting win over Limerick with the way it going to extra time um
And that quick word on that free, that was
yeah.
uh,
I mean, Conor Sweeney is an
mm.
unbelievable player, and he's been doing it for 5 or 6 years now. And we've seen him do it in Munster semi-finals against Cork. There was that game at Parky Ring where they got a goal in extra time, and then Cork went up and got one in extra time themselves. But that'll actually be quite a good game, you think. And um, so yeah, look, Cork can give teams a rattle. The one thing I was impressed with, and especially for look, they're not a Division 3 county, but they were. So to the one thing the bench for Cork, I mean, Cork's first two subs, to be able to bring on Keane and Luke Conley, I know Cork are an unbelievably big county, but that was still like when I saw those two subs, it was almost like we aren't letting off. Cork can afford to make these changes because the players they're bringing on. And we spoke about Luke Conley last week about how he's been really impressive for Nemo and for Cork at times. Bringing someone like him on, like that shot he took takes serious character and serious bravery, because if that goes wrong, if he slips, everyone talks about him. Whereas the free he took 3 or 4 minutes previous, where he took it over from the sideline, like I'd say a 10% shot, maybe even less. Um, Shows the character that he has on the ball, and absolutely is the right thing to do. And someone like him, you might think, oh, does he deserve to start? And then you can see the influence he has off the bench. So there's you'd like to see Cork give a team a rattle, and but I think that the next game is the biggest game for Cork.
Yeah, as always. Quick word on Mayo, beating Roscommon and now setting up a a Connacht final with Galway. It was actually one of the chairs lads was saying to me there that it's basically a coin flip in the bookies there, 50-50. They can't really call Mayo Galway. I think that's just general pricing of the match. I can't really see it any way you can call it before the game, just because of Mayo's ability to kind of play so well and then not play so well, I guess, which is still there. And Galway, the more of an unknown factor with Galway then, I guess, having got the walkover from Sligo then.
Yeah, I think Mayo are sort of suiting this never say die,
Yeah,
if you like,
yeah.
or
Look at their past with the qualifiers, etc. Yeah, absolutely.
the knockout. I
Mm.
think they just seem to find another gear, and the hype around Mayo will sort of be building in and around the towns and villages, and I think that suits the players. I think they play their best when they sort of feel like they are the best. Um, I'd expect them to beat Galway, although I think it'll be a very very close game. I think it'd be similar to the Kerry Cork game. I think it could be extra time and maybe even beyond. I think Galway might struggle with the fact they haven't had a competitive championship game, and I'd say to be playing a lot of challenge games and trying to replicate it, but it's not really the same. And I would expect Mayo to maybe even show their hand, if you like, and show they are a really quality force going forward, because Roscommon is one job in a Connacht semi-final, but it's knockout, so every game is an important win no matter who you're playing. So I think there'll be a lot of talk going forward for Mayo.
Yeah, on Galway, I guess it might be, in the current climate, it might be harder to get challenge games for them. So that's probably something, or has there been talk of Galway having those challenge games? I'm trying to think who would they potentially play.
Well,
I guess there are
like,
intercounty teams that would play each other, obviously. I guess behind closed doors. Well, it's all behind closed doors, isn't it?
I'm sure they are getting games. Look, whether they're playing,
probably a lot tougher to plan it now, though. I guess.
Yeah. Whether they're playing, say for example, if they were playing at Donegal, whether they're playing Donegal's best 15, probably not. Are they playing Donegal subs? You'd imagine. So look, it's not great preparation. I don't think Sligo would have been great preparation for them, but they're up against it going into Mayo. I myself would have Mayo favourites. I'd say the bookies are probably thinking of Mayo's record in Connacht over the last few years, probably looking at Galway's form earlier on in the season. But I myself would have Mayo probably slight favourites. But look, I think this year, the way it's fallen, after that Kerry result, I'd say there was texts going around in Mayo group chats of the players going, this is on here, this is set up for us to have a right crack at them. And full credit to them. I hope they go full steam ahead, because with the year it's been and everything, and in the sense Dublin winning the 5 in a row last year, I think it's set up for Mayo to win it this year, and I think the players will start to believe. But again, similar to Cork, that the next game for Mayo always seems to be the biggest one, and if they can get through Galway, the confidence it'll give them. But I'd just have Galway, or I'd have Mayo's favourites.
So we move on to the Premier League, Liverpool, Manchester City. We get straight into the VAR and the handballs. What do you make of that rule? I guess we saw back to back on Sky Sports. It seems to be a frustrating one. Like you're kind of putting a lot of luck down to these kind of penalties being given. What was your take on the handball in the City game, and then maybe the handball in the Wolves game as well?
Yeah, I think the Wolves one. I mean, when you're running with emotion, I mean it's very hard. And as Roy Keane said, the on Sky, the pace of the game is so hard for defenders. And I think I've always said it when
it's not often Roy would give anyone sympathy. So I guess that's probably a sign in itself. Like,
and he's sitting in the second tier, if you like, looking down on it, and he can see it with first hand. I think that the idea of slow motion is never good, because it never gives that perspective. And if you look at any foul in slow motion, it's a foul. I just you're kind of sick of talking about VAR at this stage, and hearing about it and watching it. I don't necessarily, when you envisage VAR 6 years ago, it wasn't brought in for those decisions, and I think it needs to get away from that. And every
clear and obvious error is what it should be there for. It should be there to pick up the. Yeah, like it's a bit of a mess. Like I was a fan of it being brought in, but now I just don't know anymore. I really don't.
I think it was brought in for stuff that the referee can't see, if you like. So, for example, the Villa disallowed goal against Arsenal in the first minute. I think it was brought in for things like that. Barkley in the sight of Leno, he's offside. And I think those kind of decisions, that's the referee in real time at the pace of the game necessarily isn't going to know if Barkley's in the line of sight of Leno, especially with the pace on the shot and the build up and everything. So I think those kind of decisions. But I mean, when you start looking into lines and split screens of
like just on lines, like the Patrick Bamford one, I still can't get over how he was offside. Like looking at it, like Jesus, like putting his hand here, and even then it doesn't look like, like I know offside is offside, but like, come on, in the same sense, So where do you draw the line? Excuse the pun.
But my line, and we've spoke about for a few years, is in cricket for LBWs, if it's too close to call, for example, on the impact, or whether it's hitting the stumps, they go to umpire's call, which is where, you know, the team doesn't lose anything by reviewing it. They get the review back because it's umpire's call, but the decision sticks with the umpire. So everyone knows where they stand. And I want to see that sort of idea being brought in, given, you know, a little bit of leeway to linesmen. If it's that close, I mean, you don't want to see a goal chalked off. You don't want to see, you know, quality attacking play being thwarted because of an offside decision. So I think, you know, a lot needs to be done with it. I mean, every week you seem to be talking about it. I just think the application of it is in the wrong scenarios. And I don't necessarily think it's a FA problem or a Premier League problem. I think it's a worldwide problem. I think, you know, every single issue has been brought in. I remember the first time it really hit home that, you know, VAR wasn't a good thing was the Tottenham City game in the Champions League when was it Laporte's or hit Laporte's arm or hit Laporte's arm for a City goal or Llorente's arm. Anyway, the goal was chalked off in the Champions League and Guardiola was celebrating. And I remember just thinking, I mean, by the letter of the law, yes, it's not a goal, but geez, Manchester
No,
City are just
it was Raheem Sterling being offside, wasn't it? Are you talking about the last minute goal?
yeah, but I think there might have been another one as well. But
Oh,
yeah, I know
okay.
the Sterling one, but there was another one
Hmm.
where it did hit the arm, and that was the first time, you know, when it's hit they go and zooming in to check someone's arm. Um, you know, look, I think everyone agrees if you're offside by a considerable amount, it's offside. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. Um, but I mean, when you're zooming in on whether someone got a boot here or a boot there, I think that's sort of where it's off at the moment. And you know,
Will we move on from VAR, will we? Because
yeah, please, yeah, we'll
yeah,
be
well,
here
we
all
just, yeah,
morning.
I know, because I had something else to say there, and I said, you know what, let's go straight. Liverpool's front four. Yeah, Klopp decided to play the front four against City. What did you make of that? I was shocked, really. I couldn't believe it. For me, it was Jota or Bobby Firmino. How do you think that worked? Because at times it was that 4-2-4. Like I remember one just looking at City trying to play out from the back, going, well, they can't get out here because they've got four Liverpool lads to break the first line. So I thought it was pretty brave from Klopp. I thought for the first 30 minutes everything was going right until they got a bit sloppy and Jesus got the equaliser, and it's a different game then. But I thought that first 30 minutes Liverpool were considerably the better team, and I thought that was really working. What did you make of that front four, basically?
I wasn't overly shocked because I think he played it once or twice already. And the way he talked about Firmino in the week, it kind of led everything for him to start, and you couldn't drop Jota after his performances. Um, yeah, I think, you know, Jurgen Klopp would certainly be the happier manager. You know, at times you thought Manchester City were going to win that game. Again, at times you think they were lucky to come away. Um, yeah, Liverpool, you know, that the front four is very, in hindsight, is very good. Pressing Manchester City. I mean, that the pressure that's on Diaz and Laporte and making them go long, and that's sort of where Liverpool are good at cleaning up those second balls, like so Robertson, Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Liverpool. You know, I think they'd be very worried about Alexander Arnold's injury. I mean, that's albeit he hasn't been at his best form. I think defensively this season, he at times he's looked a lot sharper. Um, and I think it's a missed opportunity for City. I don't think, judging by Guardiola and the press conference, I don't think he expected Liverpool to play four. I think it might have thrown him a little bit. I'm sure he planned for it, but I think that little bit of, you know, mind games or whatever from Klopp sort of worked, and for the first while, City couldn't, you know, get through Liverpool as easy as they have other teams. And at the moment, City are just missing something. I think it's very good for them that Jesus got the goal. I mean, the way he got it as well, it's a really well taken goal, and you know, if he
It's Aguero's potentially back on the 21st of November, so after the international breaks. Although that's still up in the air, because I think with Aguero it's always a bit weird that injury, because he seems to be ready to go and then maybe get injured 2 weeks later. They'd be missing the strikers, in fairness. So there was a big goal, like you said, for Jesus. But I do think Aguero gives them something completely different. Without him, they're just not scoring enough goals, not creating enough chances.
Yeah, and Sterling has, like I said, that we're sitting here talking about Manchester City probably being top of the league if Sterling scores those chances away to West Ham and Leeds, and that's the difference with this season to other seasons. Sterling has missed those two, you know, I won't say sitters, but eight out of 10 chances, and you can't afford to do that. 2 or 3 weeks on the bounce away from home when you've had a tough game, and that's I think City are still yet to click. That's why I still harbour hopes for them of really giving the title a chance or the Champions League. I think it's one or the other this year. I don't see a scenario how Pep Guardiola, the manager we know he is, the quality he has, not to win something this year with that City team, the money that's been spent. Diaz and Laporte, I mean, from Diaz's first game, I think it might have been against Arsenal, he looked really, really good, so composed at the back. I actually think he's a really good tackler in the standing tackle. I think that's huge for a team like City that want to suffocate teams. And, every time the ball comes out, Diaz at times can be really good in the standing tackle. Um, and, they're still probably lacking Cancelo at left back. I'm not a big fan of, even though he played okay. I
He's
think
been doing well going forward. Like it's a bit of a weird one playing him left back. He's actually creating a lot of chances. I think it was the game. What was the game last? Was either Sheffield United or West Ham away? He created like a record number of chances or something. So from that left back role, but obviously defensively, and it's particularly against Liverpool, this probably doesn't work as well. But like, what's the alternative there? Play Benjamin Mendy.
Well, he crossed that ball in for he crossed that ball for Jesus, and Jesus had a wide. Now I'm not sure if it was offside or not, but that's the sort of thing he gives you. And Liverpool, like I said, it was a big week for them. Last week we said it this time last week that if they could get 2 from 2, it'd put them firmly in control in the driver's seat. I think with the game.
I just sorry to interrupt. I genuinely see them as over City in that title race, are very close to it, because I think Jurgen Klopp and his tactical. I know the injuries are mounting up and mounting up. I do think he just gives them a chance, and I think I can see them just keep doing enough to beat teams at home, do enough to beat teams away, and then before you know, they just win the league by a couple of points. I do genuinely think there's something building there where Jurgen Klopp, and there's a siege mentality after the Everton game, which always helps, as you well know. Like, these things shouldn't matter, but they do. And I definitely feel that tactically against Pep Guardiola, and the fact Pep was shocked he played the front four really kind of feeds into that narrative that Klopp is probably the best manager in the Premier League, and he's got the ability to get not only the best out of the team, but probably enough to win them the league.
The one sort of thing for Liverpool at the moment is the fact that they aren't clear already. The fact that they aren't 3 or 4 points. You get the feeling that Liverpool like to be in control. They like to be in charge of their own destiny. Maybe after that season where was it 2 years ago where City and Liverpool broke records, and it was Liverpool did everything right to win the league, but they couldn't because they were behind. You get the feeling they want to be in front and sort of play from there, and maybe at home to, I don't know, Newcastle, they can afford to rest Robertson to play Milner, or afford to rest Alexander Arnold, and maybe they can't do that if they're 5 points behind. And I think that's huge for Liverpool. Even just the notion of being afforded to rest a player, say for example. Um, yeah, I think the only thing this year for Liverpool is the fact that Tottenham are up there, that Southampton, guys are getting points high up. If Liverpool drop points like they have, they're not top of the league. And even if it's 7 or 8 games in for teams, I think it's still big. Um, and the fact that different styles of teams have taken points off them this year, Aston Villa, who are so impressive at times in transitions, and when they win the ball high up, and they've Grealish and McGinn and Barkley running at them at defenses. They drop points to Everton in the cup, or in the league game. They drop points to City now. Sheffield United have caused them problems. A lot of teams have caused them problems, and I suppose you probably win 9 times out of 10 those games, the likes of West Ham, Sheffield United. But even if you win an 8 or 9, you're still dropping points, and you're still giving teams a chance. And I mean, if City can get that back four right, which at times they have this year, and they don't ship goals the way they did against Leicester, for example, I still think it'd be very, very close to call. Um, and I think how Klopp manages the workload of the squad now is so important, considering um uh, how small the squad has become because of the injuries.
Yeah, I just the worry for City is goals, like 10 goals in 7 games. It's not Pep Guardiola's style, and I think maybe Aguero might be the answer there. I just don't see City scoring enough goals, believe it or not. But we'll see how that goes in that sense. You mentioned Villa against Liverpool. What about Villa against Arsenal? They were sensational. They were so much better than Arsenal in pretty much every department, to be honest with you. And very unlucky not to go 1-0 down, 1-0 up in the first minute. We've been through the VAR decisions there. Yeah, what did you make of Villa first of all? And has the Arteta bubble burst, or has there been just a reality check for Arsenal fans over the last couple of weeks that the Arsenal in big games have something there, but in reality they've got nothing against smaller teams, and it almost feels like, and a lot of people were saying this, it almost feels like Arteta's trying to play every single pass for the team, which is great and all, but first of all, when the crowds come back, you won't be able to do that, and secondly, it has to be a bit of player expression, because it just seemed like that watching him, he wanted to be in control of every single pass for the team. But what did you make of Arteta, or sorry, Villa first of all, and then into Arteta and Arsenal?
Yeah, Villa were magnificent. It was, you kind of expected it. Arsenal struggling in these games, but I when I heard that Ross Barkley was going on loan to Villa, I was absolutely shocked. I thought it was an unbelievable signing by Villa.
And just on that, with the Premier League fan predictions, I think it was the first one I asked everyone, did you think it was a great sign for Villa? And everyone, fairness, said yeah, they thought there's something there. I think he's almost a cult hero. So yeah, he's been amazing, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I couldn't get over the fact that Chelsea were willing to get rid of him. And maybe they didn't see Villa as a huge threat, if you like. Maybe they'd finish 13th, 14th at best, but I think Villa can have hopes of a top 10. I mean, I've said it for a while, even especially in the Championship. Jack Grealish will get kicked around the pitch. He'd get abused by opposition fans because he's so well known. He's one of those players. He wears his socks down. He has slick back hair. He goes around, as if he's the best player on the pitch. And inadvertently in the Championship and in the Premier League, he is often the best player on the pitch. And I think that year in the Championship of going down and staying with Villa, and the joys of staying up last season because they beat Arsenal, and because the results went their way in the last game of the season, has really helped Villa. And Jack Grealish is turning into the world class player that everyone saw 4 or 5 years ago when they were in the Premier League, under Tim Sherwood and the likes, and they have been tremendous. And to be honest, he's probably been the player of the season this year. He has been unbelievable against Arsenal. He destroyed them. Against Liverpool, he destroyed them.
Just before we get on, just on Jack, I always feel like a player and the persona he has. So he's gone into the box, the fullback's backing off, but because it's Jack Grealish, instead of being on near the corner flag, by the time he gets going and ready to go, the defender's backed up so much that he's in the penalty area. So something you can't touch him. It's almost like you earned that right, and once people see you play that well, they're going to be like, yeah, that's Jack Grealish. Let's back off him. And like you said, he's playing like the best player on the pitch. I just, as you were talking, I was thinking player of the season before you even said it as well.
And the one player that instantly comes to mind when you think of Jack Grealish and who he plays like is Eden Hazard. He is basically the English version of it, Eden Hazard. I don't get why he's not in the England team. Even at times, like, because of the because of the nature of player that he is, he's sort of so unique. He's not if you like, he's not a typical English player. English players like that, they aren't quick enough to play on the wing. They tend not to be that skillful to play on the wing. They sort of feed into the middle and sort of play in the 10 role, if you like. And Jack Grealish has sort of improved his game so much, and he's adapted his game so much that he can play anywhere for England, for Aston Villa. I think he's that good this year that whether he could have been 60 million last year or 50 million. I mean, I think 80 million and above. If Nicola Pepe is worth 72 million and he's not Premier League proven, God knows how much Grealish is going to be worth. And to be honest, I don't think many teams. I think every team will go from. I don't think many teams are going to buy him. I think he's going to be that expensive to get.
But like you said, because he's so unique, I can actually see him playing in so many different systems. Because he can play. He's not slow. Do you know what I mean? And he's skillful as well. He'll put a shift in for you. So I don't get the Southgate thing, but we've talked enough about that on the podcast. But I just think he fits into so many different teams, like you said. If Villa keep playing as they are, and maybe challenge and are not far off a top 6 finish, there's no reason why he can't stay next year. Although, like, if I don't think anyone would begrudge him a Champions League move as well.
No, I think you're right. I don't think anyone would begrudge him because he's a Villa lad. He stayed with them. He stayed loyal when they went down the first time. He stayed loyal when they went down again. And you know that even this year, I mean, he signed a 5-year deal. He stayed loyal with them. You know, and he's just, I think he is. I think he is getting to that stage where he's doing it consistently, week in, week out, against every team, against every system. And I think he's getting to that world class stage. And I think any team would be lucky to have him. You think of Chelsea, he'd fit in there. He'd fit into City and Liverpool. He'd fit into
Arsenal.
Arsenal. Like he'd fit into any team in the league. And I think there'd be a lot of teams now that would be looking at Grealish on the continent and thinking, can he improve us? You think of like even the big clubs. And if Grealish, I think the one thing with Grealish is because he's not playing in the Champions League, he's not in that window, if you like, and it's a different ball game doing it in the Premier League. And that's why I think if he gets into that England team, um, you know, and maybe does it that next year in the major tournament, or you know, even does it in the big nation league games, um, I think he can harbour hopes. But you know, I think you know a lot of people will look back to Villa's run in the championship, and before the run, before Dean Smith came in, you know, Villa were so poor. Grealish was poor at times. They just never really got anything going. And I think Dean Smith, a Villa man as well, a Villa fan growing up, sort of gave Grealish the captaincy in that championship year, gave him the responsibility, as said, you're the best player in this division. You've got to get us back up to the Premier League. We've got Tammy Abraham who's going to score your goals if you create. And I think ever since the captaincy, I think there was a game at Sheffield United were 3-0 up in the championship with I'd say 7 or 8 minutes to go. And Grealish and Villa came back to draw 3-3, and from that moment on, Villa were outstanding. And Grealish was the best player in the championship for the last 4 months of that season since January, and the playoff final and everything. I think everyone will remember the Birmingham game where he he gets punched in the back of the head by a tug, and then scores that wonderful goal, the skill and trickery to create a yard of space, and then get subbed off by the manager, and I think that has sort of made Jack into the Grealish into the player that he is, and I really do think he's been the best player this season, and I think we said at the start of the season that Watkins was a really good sign, and he's sort of scoring goals now, but I thought at the start of the season if he was to get a few goals and get his confidence up, he's a real handful. And the Arsenal defence could not control him last night. He's pacey. If the ball goes up to him, he'll hold it up. And even without scoring, I think he was still so good for Villa. And I think that's what we spoke about in the podcast. He's one of those players that if he doesn't score, he'll get you man of the match. And he was brilliant. And to be honest, Villa were quite brilliant.
Just finished on Villa. So that Birmingham Villa Jack Grealish thing, we actually spoke on the Peter Blexy interview. If you haven't listened to that yet, that's in your podcast feeds. I think the best thing with Villa is they have a team now. They're 11 and they have a system and a style of play. And I almost feel like, just to compare Watkins very quick and then move on to Arsenal here, because I know we're cut short for time here. You almost feel like Watkins is already potentially a better striker than both Eddie, Nketiah and Lacazette, albeit different roles. And what is going on in Arsenal in that sense, in terms of they just seem to, like I was touching on there with Arteta, he just seems to control every pass, and sometimes there needs to be a bit more expression. Arsenal aren't an exciting team to watch going forward, like, at all. They scored, similar to City, they've scored 9 goals in 8 games now. It's like, and has there been any amazing play in that? There's been a penalty or two. What's your take on Arteta, on that Arteta project? That seems, I just thought it was a bit of a bubble burst, and it was that performance was probably coming, and that result was probably coming, and the United game almost papered over the cracks because they were able to go back to what they're doing best and just set up as a back five. And Partey's been very good since he's come in.
The thing about Watkins is, and I'm sure Arsenal, the club they are, and Brentford being, sort of a close ally of them, would have seen Watkins, and every team in the Premier League would have seen Watkins and thought, he's good, but he's too raw. He's 33 million. Yes, he's got goals in the Championship. Oh, it's a risk. I won't do it. The reason Dean Smith did it is he managed him at Brentford. He made him into the player he is. He knew Watkins' strength, and there's 5 or 6 Ollie Watkins in the Championship. There really is. There's this year. That there's players
Give us an example. Give us a couple of examples actually, very quick.
Well, just even going back a couple of years, look at Che Adams at Birmingham, right? And it's taken him a year or so.
Taking him ages, yeah.
Yeah,
As close Che Adams fans, it's taken him a while, but he's slowly getting there. Yeah.
Look at Brentford now. That the replacement of Watkins, Ivan Toney, who was at Peterborough, he's starting to bang the goals in. You know that there's real quality in the Championship. Look, I know someone who's been talked about for a long time as being Breda Sambalonga. He's probably a little bit older now. He was at Watford, and he's had a decent start to the season at Middlesbrough. So there is real quality. Adam Armstrong, who used to play for Newcastle, at Blackburn, he's doing pretty well. So in the Championship, there's a lot of types of Ollie Watkins, if you like. There's some unbelievable players playing week in, week out in the Championship. I mean, Joe Pedro for Watford, that was an unbelievable signing they got, and if they got him in the Premier League, God knows what would have happened to them. But I think a lot more teams. Look at what Villa have done to the Championship. They got Matty Cash at right back, who looks a very, very impressive signing.
Not Forest, isn't it?
Not Forest, and not Forest of Joe Lolly there. Another player who Premier League clubs should be snapping up. You've got Watkins, and Ben Rama has gone to West Ham. So look, the quality there is in the Championship. I'm a huge believer in the Championship. I think it's one of the best, the best competitive leagues out there. There's so many hidden gems. There's so many projects for managers and coaches to come in and sort of work with. And I think that Villa have done so well from that they've become a better side. The point on Arsenal is I think it simply goes back to the recruitment. There's, the Mesut Ozil stuff is, everyone knows it at this stage, but I think to go in the summer and have, knowing the fact that Ozil's not going to play and not have a ready-made replacement. Look, I want to see Joe Willock being given the role. Maybe he's not a conventional number 10, but he's a dynamic runner with the ball. He can give you a little bit of something. I think it's too regimented, the system at the moment. I don't think you can play 5 at the back and 2 holding midfielders at home to Aston Villa. That there's no flexibility with it. Bukayo Saka, at times when he does want to play in the number 10 role and comes in field, he's very effective. You can't excuse Lacazette's header. I think it's not good enough for a Premier League.
And that came from Kieran Tierney's cross in what seemed like the only time he was actually on the. Do you know what I mean? It almost feels like he was playing left back for that particular phase of play. Why can't he play left back? He seems wasted at left centre back, and he's not putting enough crosses in. And that was literally Arsenal's only chance in the first half, and it was an absolutely it would have been an unbelievable assist, wouldn't it? Like, it was such a good cross, and you couldn't defend that. And Watkins probably scores it, but anyway.
Yeah. I think Lacazette actually heads it with the top of his head as opposed to his forehead. I mean, that probably tells you everything that's going wrong with Lacazette. And look, it's a huge problem for Arsenal going forward, the lack of goals. But I mean, the chances, you can't afford to miss that chances. Willian had a few, 20-30% chances. You've got to take them sometimes, especially when you're 1-0 down so early in the game. And they couldn't afford that. And it has. It's been a huge problem for them, and it will be going forward. And at the moment, Aston Villa are probably been my standout team this year. They're my favourite team to watch. I've liked Dean Smith since he was at Brentford. I mean, Brentford, I suppose, as always for Championship followers, has always been a team to watch. They're so good going forward. They've so many great players. I mean, when Jota was playing with Brentford for Dean Smith, it was the likes of Watkins there. And the fact that in the league you still have a couple of homegrown managers, if that sense. I mean, managers who supported their clubs growing up. It's a really good look for the league, that the likes of Wilder and Smith, and 2 managers who've made their break at League One and Championship and are thriving where they are now. Well, maybe not Chris Wilder, but I'm sure he'll look to address that.
Yeah, Dean Smith almost feels like an underrated manager in that sense. Quick, anything else you want to talk about the Premier League? We've only got one. Sorry, before. Yep.
Maybe it just shows you how volatile the league is. That Dean Smith was 1 game away from getting relegated. Villa stuck with him last year. They kept him, and it just shows that managers are given time to get the right signings in. They become a better side for it. If Dean Smith gets relegated, I still think Villa would get up in the Championship. But the fact that they backed him in the summer with Matty Cash, Watkins, Barkley. The thing about Cash and Watkins is he knows them. He's played against him. He knows Watkins inside out. He knows Cash because he's played him so often, against him so often. And the signings have worked. And to be honest, I don't really recall many championship signings that never really worked that much. Do you know, in that sense, like someone that's a 15, probably less a 10 or a 15 million pound championship player in the Premier League, I don't think there's any glaring omissions that come in. And maybe sometimes that's a safer buy than, getting a Sebastian Haller from Eintracht Frankfurt. And, maybe clubs are adapting to that more and more, that they're understanding the quality in the league, because there is serious quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you want to go for the last couple of minutes? Actually, just on that Villa point, it's amazing they've actually got the joint best defensive record. They've actually got a game in hand to tie Leicester at the top of the league. You forget kind of the couple of games in hand those four teams had. Where do you want to go the last couple of minutes? In
Well,
terms
maybe
of, there's United. We always spend a lot of time talking about United, so I prefer some other topic.
Maybe just look at Everton. I think Everton are going to struggle in the next while. And I think,
Is
for
it?
all of us,
Go on, sorry, go on.
for all of us building them up early on, I thought they've lacked something in the last couple of weeks. The Newcastle game was a big worry for me when I saw the team. I fancied Newcastle anyway because you knew Richarlison would be suspended and Rodriguez injured. But when I saw the team, I fancied Newcastle. I mean, if the Newcastle back five are seeing Calvert-Lewin, Sigurdsson, Gomez, Bernard. I mean, Calvert-Lewin's the only one really you have to worry about. Gylfi Sigurdsson has turned himself into a central midfielder that doesn't really contribute a whole amount going forward. He sort of adapted his game. Okay, Bernard got his goal the weekend. He's a tricky little player. He's decent, and Andre Gomez is okay. But Calvert-Lewin there, if you're looking at that back five, Calvert-Lewin's the only one who's going to give you a huge amount of troubles. And that's the problem. Without Richarlison and without James Rodriguez sort of being with them two, Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison, there is big problems for Everton. And the fact that they can't keep themselves in games because of their defensive record. Look, I know Pickford had that thought for the penalty where the foul, or if you like, the infringement on Maguire that wasn't given. But even still, he's just so shaky with shots, and we said it for ages. Like, I don't know how this fella's England number one. You can't have a goalkeeper that's so unpredictable. Even if you just have a run of the mill goalkeeper. When Ben Foster was in the Premier League, like, I didn't know why he wasn't being played ahead of Pickford. Look, Pickford's okay with the ball. Like, I don't think he's not at an Ederson level. I mean, he can kick it far. But I just think, look, England are missing a trick with that goalkeeping situation, and it's been a huge problem since probably before Joe Hart, when it was David James and Scott Carson and Rob Green and lads like that, and they just never seem to really have a number one. And maybe that's what Southgate's doing this year, is he's got, or the last couple of years, he wants number one regardless of anything. But that's signing his own death warrant, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. It's important to mention the Super Saints as well, and Che Adams. So the top six beckons for the Saints.
Another player who's been up there, I think Stuart Armstrong is one of the most.
He was very good, wasn't he? Yeah.
I think he's one of the most underrated Premier League players. Not out, he's probably the most underrated Southampton player. But even when he was at Celtic, I mean, this guy was unbelievable for Celtic, and a brilliant signing by Southampton, who kind of know that market well.
And just I just thought they played him. I think they found something without Danny Ings. They've Che Adams there, and they've Stuart Armstrong and Walcott just off him. And when I saw the team, I was actually quite excited by it, but wasn't expecting to click as much. So yeah, exciting times for the Southampton.
And they went to 5 at the back, and they've sort of been meddling with a 5 and 4 for a while. Burton I wasn't playing, but I think, look, Stuart Armstrong he's one of those exciting players to watch. He's a fan's favourite, and he's probably shown now. And it's probably I wouldn't say a peak time for Scotland, but I mean, if Scotland get through to the Euros, the squad that they are starting to assemble is very, very impressive. McGinn, McTominay, Armstrong, Tierney, Robertson. I mean, they're still lacking a goal scorer. Don't get me wrong, but I think they're starting to develop something, and it's a huge game for them. And if they can get through, which I hope they do, I hope they get through. I think it's Slovenia they're playing. I think it's big for Scotland, and it's big for the North if they get through as well, because they are, like I said, they're starting to have more and more Premier League players. Johnny Evans, I think, might have picked up a slight injury the other day. Paddy McNair playing for Middlesbrough last week. seemed to twin something. I know he played the weekend, so look, I think the North will just be happy to get into that game, and the same with Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland is, or it's Serbia. Serbia they're playing, so that makes sense. Yeah, cool. That's it, John. Appreciate your time. We're going to preview those internationals on Thursday show in the weekend preview. With the Ireland games, we'll have a couple of live shows as well coming up. And one live show is on tomorrow, and it'll be 11 a.m. We've Malachy Clerkin from the Irish Times talking all things the Masters. Sean, pretty exciting as Masters week, to be honest with you. If you're not already reading a couple of previews ahead of the show tomorrow, that's 11 a.m. It'll be live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and be up in your podcast feed later on. And we'll have internationals previews the next. That's pretty much it. All that's left to say is goodbye from Sean.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from myself. We'll chat to you later the week. Join us for the Masters preview. That's 11 a.m. Tuesday, and that'll be live on all our social media channels. Good luck.